Welcome to Alaska Matters with Chris Story. To reach Chris, call 226-3933. 226-3933. Now, giving you something to talk about, here's Chris Story.
Thank you, Nan White. Along with me today is Mr. Dave Webb. He will be our engineer and your producer of today's program. True to be the greatest show on earth. If you don't believe me, just ask my mother. She says it really is the best show on earth. I'm, of course, Christopher Story, your host for Great Adventures in the Last Frontier. Today's going to be no exception to that. If you've tuned in to just hear me pontificate, talk about myself a little bit, talk about my family, you're in luck. We'll do that. In addition to that, we'll also be talking with Homer City Councilman Beau Burgess. Beau Burgess is relatively new to the political scene, I think. You and I will both get to know him a little bit better today as he and I converse. And also on the program, Sarah Richardson will be here, and she is, of course, the author of the wonderful blog, Becoming Alaskan. And it also could likewise be Becoming American, because you'll recall she's from British Columbia, and she is Becoming Alaskan. So that's all coming up. But first, a lot of people have been telling me lately, Chris, you're really brave. And why would they say that? Why would they say that I'm really brave? Am I out there hunting? Am I out there slaying the dragon? No, I just speak my mind. And I'm wondering if that is something that is possibly a thing of the past, or maybe something that is unique to people that are in business, because there is a fear in small business, in small communities, that if you say something that you believe passionately about, and you say it with passion, and you're not rude necessarily, but you just speak your mind and are upholding your own beliefs, that there can be retaliation for that perhaps somebody will not do business with you. And I'll tell you one good example of that was when there was a boycott talked about businesses that advertised on this very station during the Rush Limbaugh show. And so there is some fear that if you speak your mind, or if you show support for something you believe in, then possibly you'll be finding yourself with fewer customers and so forth. And I say, here's what I say. If you're frustrated, if you're like me and you find yourself scratching your head and saying, I don't recognize my country, or at least the direction that it appears to be going, that fewer people want to row the boat and more people want to ride, and that we're concerned about the mentality that we're being told is just to accept it because that's what you should do, and just here, take your pill, take your pablum, and go home and watch American Idol. If you're concerned like me, what can you do? Here's what I suggest. Get vocal and act local. It's up to you and me. You can't do anything about what's happening in Washington, D.C. until it's time to elect your representatives there, your congressman, which we just did, and your 2 Democratic senators, which will have another opportunity. You're starting to see Mark Begich's ads already on television. So it's you. It's you. You must stand up and say enough. Stop the government waste in your own backyard. That's the only way we're going to stop the government waste and the impact on our country. And we're going to have to hold City Manager Walt Reedy and the City Council and our Borough Assembly and everything that you and I can control and connect with on a local basis. We're going to have to hold them responsible for every dollar spent. You heard on this very program Mayor Wyeth, as candidate Wyeth at that point, she felt that it was a good investment, keyword there, investment, to spend several $100,000 planning a $9 million city hall that ultimately you, the voters, rejected. So it's time to speak out and say, this is what I believe, and yes, there's risk involved, but you have a voice locally, and I suggest you make it known, because that's the only way you are going to feel better about your contribution. That's my opinion. I think you should be thanking God and be giving many thanks this year during Thanksgiving holiday that you still have the freedom of speech. And I'm suggesting that we use it, both you and I. Get vocal and act local. Individual rights must supersede that of the collective. It's the foundation of this very country. And if you and I don't speak out in favor and support of that, what will become of the collective? Because if the people within the collective have no individual rights, the collective might as well fall. It stands for nothing without individual rights. So take a risk, speak out today, be passionate about what you believe in, and stick around for the entire show. Alaska matters, and so do you.
Commit this number to memory, 399-1526. When you need snow removal, snow plowing, and sanding this winter, call Richard at 399-1526. Greatwire Construction, locally owned and lifelong Alaskan operated, can take care of all your snow plowing, snow removal, and sanding needs. If you'd like, Richard will deliver sand to your residence for your use when needed. Licensed, bonded, and insured. Greatwire Construction, 399-1526.
Now that it's colder and darkness has taken over, it's easy to let it get you down. But you know, one thing that really perks me up, how more and more people are lighting up their houses for the holidays, thanks to Christmas Decor by Dutch Boy Landscaping. Dutch Boy makes turning your home or business into a cheery piece of the winter puzzle, minus the hassle of having to find a good spot to base a ladder on ice, battle the elements, or scale that roof. It makes a lot of sense to rely on expert decorators trained in safety and proper installation methods. Christmas Decor offers customized lighting displays, garlands, wreaths, and bows. They can design the display, install it, maintain it. They even take down and clean up when the season's over. So if you've been dreading hauling out boxes and boxes of holiday decorations and the threat to life and limb it entails, maybe it's your year to leave it to Christmas Decor by Dutch Boy Landscaping. Find out more about brightening up your place with professional holiday decorating. Contact Danny at 235-7140. 235-7140. Christmas Decor by Dutch Boy. Call now.
I'm Chris Story here with your Radio Realty Reality Check. In 1955, Dr. Doner's office visit was $2. Now, still practicing medicine in Illinois at age 87, the visit will cost you $5. He said, I don't practice medicine for the love of money, but for the love of healing. Are you following your passion? Work full-time on your job and part-time on your future fortune. Real estate's my passion. What's yours? Catch Radio Realty every Wednesday at 12:30 on KPEN 102 FM. I'm Chris Story, your host for Great Adventures in the Last Frontier. You are listening to Alaska Matters. I want to remind you that matters of importance are Alaska Matters, and you can go listen to this program anytime you'd like at AdventureAlaskaRadio.com. Just type in the 3 W's and then AdventureAlaskaRadio.com. Homer News brings you this portion of the program, and as you know, you can go to the homernews.com and check out this awesome web blog. It's one of my favorites. It's called Becoming Alaskan. And here with Becoming Alaskan is our very own Sarah Richardson. Sarah, take it away.
Great. To celebrate Tyler's 3rd birthday, Hunter and I decided to take her up to Anchorage to H2 Oasis. You know, that giant indoor water park? Well, I learned that one can get a lot out of a kid with the promise of an indoor water park, especially an Alaskan kid for whom water slides are a super special thing. Heck, I managed to go bathing suit shopping with a 3-year-old, dangling the promise of a water slide. That's pretty good, eh? Yep, I went bathing suit shopping in Anchorage in the winter, and I am now the proud owner of one terribly unflattering CEO. The only thing that kept me from sobbing in the Sports Authority change room was that the suit was on sale, and I didn't have to spend $90 for the privilege of looking as badly as I did. Well, the water park was a blast. Tyler had so much fun and played for hours and hours and hours. We finally dragged her out of the water, into some clothes, and off to dinner, where we celebrated her birthday with chocolate cake and pizza. Swimsuit horror aside, it was a pretty good day. So this is our first trip to Anchorage with the baby. It was a different dynamic for us, having 2 kids in tow. We used to take turns with Toddler. Every morning as Anchorage trips passed, we would compare to-do lists, trade off, and hit the more kid-unfriendly places alone. Couldn't really do that this time. We hadn't been to Anchorage in months. Our respective to-do lists were huge. We had to pick a kid and take our chances. On Sunday morning, Hunter wanted to shop Sportsman's Warehouse. On his list was a pair of hiking boots. He chose Toddler. Now, has it ever happened to you where your spouse called you and you could tell that they're spitting mad, and when they start telling you why they're so spitting mad, you start laughing, and worse, you can't stop? Well, yeah, that's what happened to me when Hunter called to tell me about his trip to the sports store. It started with ice cream. When he walked into the store with Toddler, she immediately spotted the freezer case filled with ice cream. After a bit of negotiation, Hunter got away from the ice cream and over to the footwear display. Now, I told Hunter that Toddler likes shoes, and I don't think he ever realized just how much she likes shoes. He probably thought I was exaggerating. I'm pretty sure he doesn't think I'm exaggerating anymore. While he tried on his hiking boots, Toddler tried on, well, everything she could get her little hands on. I asked him to pick out a pair of winter boots for her should he come across a pair. He said he tried. He said he really tried. He tried, but Hunter insisted on buying the shoes she was wearing, which were two floor models. One pink boot about 4 sizes too small, and one purple boot about 2 sizes too big. Well, after some negotiation and a few tears, and I don't know whose tears those were, he got her back into her own boots and continued to the store. Then Hunter found Toddler found the floor model kid-size camp chair. Hunter said it was hideous. It was a ratty blue and white chair that had clearly seen better days. Toddler loved it. She sat and she stayed. And try as he might, Hunter could not get that girl to relinquish the chair. So he decided to work it to his advantage. He'd trick her into standing up, pick up the chair, run to the aisle he wanted to shop to, put the chair in front of the aisle, wait for Toddler to catch up, and sit herself down, and proceed to shop the aisle. He said it worked like a charm until he realized he was running out of store, and he needed to make that chair go away. So he decided to redirect Toddler. That's what the parenting expert stated, redirect them. Well, on the floor was a camp trailer all set up with bunks and tables and chairs. He drew Toddler's attention to the trailer, got her inside, and quickly hid the camp chair. "Come play camping with me, Daddy," came from the call from the trailer. Hunter patted himself on the back as he climbed on in. Seconds later came, "Daddy, where's my chair?" Toddler then flew out of the trailer, found the chair Hunter hid, and dragged it inside and sat herself down. Now at this point, Hunter was getting desperate. There was no way he was buying that ratty old chair, and no way he could see that Toddler would give it up. He thought about bribery. He thought about that ice cream chest, and thought long and hard about what he vowed never to do, which was bribe our kid to behave. But as he learned, desperate times call for desperate measures. So he did it. He bribed her, and it failed. Toddler wanted that chair more than she wanted ice cream. So Hunter once more talked her into standing up, picked up the chair, and in one last desperate attempt, ran to the camp section where thankfully sat a picture-perfect, pink, toddler-sized camp chair. He put the ratty blue chair in front of it, and lucky for him, Toddler went for the brand-new pink chair. Even better, the chair cost $11. Hunter said that even if the chair cost $111, probably would have had to walk out with it. So they picked up the new pink chair, made their way to the checkout, and finally got themselves out of the store. He did it. He took Toddler to Sportsman's Warehouse, accomplished his goal of finding a new pair of hiking boots, and all it cost him was an extra hour and an $11 bright pink camp chair. I think he got off easy. Even though I'm still well and firmly in the marital doghouse for laughing at him, I think he got off easy. Well, I'm Sarah Richardson, and you can find my blog at sarahisinalaska.blogspot.com or on the Home and News website.
Thank you, Sarah. Our very own Becoming Alaskan. I told her earlier she's our favorite Canadian Alaskan American. So thank you very much, Sarah. That'll be available, of course, at homernews.com. And without further ado, let me introduce my other guest. That would be Homer City Councilman Beau Burgess. Beau, welcome to Alaska Matters, and thanks for taking your time to be here with us today.
Thanks. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, you can just listen to this, Beau. Don't answer this out loud. I've got lots of questions for you, but this one's for the listeners, and this is brought to us by Blackwater Bend Espresso. We want to send you out there for free. Forgive me, because I've actually had 2 quad shot Americanos, so I am flying high today on caffeine. But here's your chance to go for free. Answer this question. Where does the glass go that you put in the glass bin at the landfill here in Homer? Does it get shipped to Anchorage, get crushed into the landfill, or does it get shipped to the lower 48? Tiffany's standing by with 7 lines open at 226-3933. Where does the glass go? Does it get crushed, shipped to Anchorage, or the lower 48? Okay. Hey, Beau, well, thanks for being on the program again. And listen, I announced earlier that you were relatively new to politics, I think. Now, you've been a council person since you took over Kevin Hogan's seat. Was that your first experience in politics?
Yeah. So that was a little less than a year ago, a half a year ago.
All right. So why did you raise your hand and go, you know what, I'll take that seat? Did somebody coerce you into it, or did you just say, it's time, I want to do this?
Well, I own 2 small businesses here in Homer. One's a bookkeeping company, small business services, and the other is a landscaping construction company. And particularly with the landscaping from a planning and zoning standpoint, I just kept running up against a wall when it came to banging my head against the wall when it came to city policy. So I figured, you can either be a part of the landscape, a part of the problem, or part of the solution, and that was largely my impetus for deciding to apply for that seat.
So what then, define for me, based on that statement then, define for me what do you see the role of the council or the city administration, planning, zoning, government in general in, say, a small town like Homer? What role do you see that playing in the individual's life?
Well, that's a complicated issue, and we can, approach it from all sorts of different levels. But I think, honestly, especially having been in for a little while now, the truth is a minimal role, but there is room for some role. I'm neither of the opinion that government serves no place in our daily lives. I believe we need police, we need firefighters, we need a certain amount of public resources spent on the public good. At the same time, government needs to be incredibly wary of micromanaging, social engineering, engaging in things that financially don't make sense for the vast majority of us. So somewhere in the middle.
Well, then I've got to go here then. You knew I had to. I have to go to the plastic bag issue because I see that diametrically opposed to what you just said. I really appreciate what you just said. Minimal encroachment into the individual's lives. Well, how does, for those listening, explain, if you would, just sort of the precipice for, or what provided you the catalyst to say we need to ban a certain type of plastic bag in Homer specifically, and how does that correlate with your political philosophy, which you just articulated, which I love, by the way?
Well, I appreciate two things about what you just said. One is I appreciate you saying that banning a very specific type of plastic bag, because I think a whole lot of the controversy of that ordinance came from people thinking that the city of Homer was stepping in and banning just a huge swath of plastic across the board. Again, generally, this kind of thing, my support of the plastic bag ordinance is not typical of generally where I stand on the issues. But in this particular case, I didn't really see any other way how we as a maritime community could relatively economically address a very specific problem that it didn't look like anyone else was going to address or be willing to address. I mean, the simple fact of the matter is plastic bags, they are toxic to our maritime community. They do have an impact on our ability to be a tourist destination. Obviously, I live relatively close to the dump, so I'm familiar with these lightweight plastic bags, being blown around, being in the trees. And I felt that the cost versus benefit in this particular instance was pretty minimal. I mean, we're talking about basically a $30 per 1,000 plastic bag increase to use a slightly thicker, slightly heavier plastic bag that isn't as much of an impact to marine mammals, doesn't blow around as easily. So it's in my mind, we made the choice that was a reasonable compromise. Obviously, there are people on both sides of it who say, we didn't go far enough. We need to ban all plastic or ban plastic bags completely. This is too far, too intrusive in my mind. But at the same time, something that weighed the cost needed to be done.
And it always sounds good, like what you just said sounds, okay, that's fine. And I heard that same dialogue happening during the time with which it was being discussed, and then it was ultimately vetoed by then Mayor Hornaday and then re-voted on by the council and passed again. I heard all of that, and I don't dispute the fact that we need to do a better job policing ourselves relative to pollution, but Beau, isn't that the real issue, that this is a pollution question, not a matter of, in your words, micromanaging small business in our community?
Certainly through the lens of pollution. I mean, there are lots of reasons for limiting the use of a certain very thin-walled kind of plastic bag. And again, I want to emphasize to listeners that you're going to go to the grocery store in 2013 and you'll still be able to put your veggies in plastic, still be able to do a bunch of things. You're either going to get a paper bag instead or a slightly thicker plastic bag. But back to your question, it's not any single one issue that in my mind justified it. It was the fact that we're going to have to start trucking all our waste down the road to Saldana. So we as a municipality, as a borough, have to pay for that. Anything we can do to reduce that is a benefit.
But these bags will actually, to that point, these bags will actually be heavier. They take more petroleum to produce. They're heavier to ship to Homer. They're heavier to, it's all very minuscule. But there again, we get drawn into this conversation, you and I. Any reasonable thinking person can get drawn into the merits of either side of it. But, Beau, isn't it a slippery slope? When next before the council will be something that might gore your ox. For example, your business, as you mentioned, don't use these bags, but you do use diesel in a pretty heavy way. What if the council starts where does it stop? What if we start to micromanage your fuel and the types of fuel and so forth? Do you see what I'm saying? It just seems like such a slippery slope of individual rights being eroded.
Definitely, and there is no perfect or singular answer to that. I mean, basically, the only thing you can do, especially once you're in a position where you're making these kinds of decisions, is to take the issues one at a time. The plastic bag issue is a controversial one because it is a slippery slope. There are a lot of different sides to it. and there is no perfect answer. But I don't think that the appropriate discussion to have as a result, obviously we want to take each situation one at a time. We can't ever say, though, that government has no role or this is a line we'll never cross, because the moment you say something like that, then you find yourself in a situation where fate conspires to make you cross that line. I can think of so many different things already that are possibilities along.
Well, I like your statement that yes, I agree with you, and I think most of our listeners will agree that government has a role in our lives, and that's what really I wanted to find out from you. What role did you see it as? I see it personally as extremely limited, especially when you're talking about these kinds of ordinances. Well, let's move on then. Let's move on to non-prepared foods tax. Brian Zach, who was a big supporter of the plastic bag ban, is now proposing, at least I've read it in the paper, that he is proposing it might be time to look at repealing the holiday on non-prepared foods tax during the shoulder and winter season. Where do you stand on that issue?
Well, fundamentally this comes about because the city, although it's done a fairly good job of budgeting in the past, building up reserves, it really is charged by the citizens and by its base obligations to do more than it can really afford to do. So, of course, the next logical place to look for this big chunk of money that the city doesn't have is at the non-prepared food tax. And I'm sure, we would also all love to make that money appear. For me personally, I don't feel right about increasing any tax on citizens without giving them the ability to vote on it in some form. Obviously, the council has a right because the borough has approved our ability to do that, but again, I feel like we should never raise taxes without making a very strong emergency case to citizens and without giving citizens the right to vote on it.
Well, in the citizens actually have voted twice on this, once at the borough level when it was first introduced and the holiday was accepted, and then the city actually spent $5,000 on an awareness campaign to try to influence the vote to a second ballot proposition just on the local city level. Should we or should we not collect that, since the borough is not? And we said again, no, we would like it not to be. How does this conversation then parlay into spending $15,000 on iPads for the city council, which I know you voted against? How can you justify, not you, but the city, say Walt Reedy or the city council, justify saying, okay, well, we're over-tasked and under-revenued here. Oh, well, let's go spend $15,000 on iPads. When the attorney, I thought, came up with it. Never, where do you hear an attorney saving money? She said, well, you could just use the servers here and use the city addresses, and we'll capture the emails on the city servers. And yet Walt stood up and said, or we could buy everybody iPads for $15,000.
Well, I really appreciate you bringing that up, because that's, I think, more indicative of how I usually take a position on the issues. Is if there's a better, more cost-effective solution, that's the one we should pursue. And I personally was never convinced, I'm still not convinced, as someone who does quite a bit of IT and small business work, that $15,000 worth of iPads were the best solution to the problem.
Yeah.
Certainly, exchange servers and very inexpensive, cost-effective, possibly small computer systems would have been a much better solution. I think the concern the city was trying to address there was the fact that because of resulting court actions and interpretations with what happened to Governor Palin's, basically any municipal officials' device that they use for correspondence or use in part of preparation for legislation can be, confiscated by the court.
Right. But, you and I are both small business people, and in times when we're tightening the belt, and that's what we keep hearing, is that a wise expenditure? And again, you voted against it, so obviously you did not feel it was a wise expenditure. And you've got, say, $90,000 expended on brand new furniture for the newly remodeled City Hall and so forth, big LCD screens hanging in there, and it seems to me, and a lot of people that are talking to me, Beau, that and maybe they're talking to you too, that wow, in this day and age, we'd like to see the belt tightened. We'd like to see a little more responsible spending, and then, if need be, talk about that non-prepared foods tax holiday. But if I'm understanding you correctly, you're not in favor of removing that holiday and beginning to collect that tax again.
There's a couple different aspects to that. One, I absolutely agree. I think we should never expend any funds if there's a better alternative for meeting our goal that's much more inexpensive. But the truth of the matter is, from a budgetary standpoint, what really costs the city money is Port and Harbor, EMS services, fire and police, and city staff. Even if we slashed all discretionary spending across the board, things like iPads, furniture, hall remodels, everything, we still wouldn't make up
$200,000 spent on planning in the city hall.
Yeah, I mean, even then, we would still not quite make up the shortfall. Obviously, City Hall would be the big one. I think a more sticky issue, but a discussion that's more worth having, is how the city covers health care costs for its employees, how the city compensates public employees. It's not a pretty question. It's not going to be a pretty discussion, but
I think that could be a false dichotomy if we start talking about staff versus just controlling expenditures. Like, would you rather have 3 employees in this department, or brand new furniture in Walt's anteroom outside of his office with leather couches, etc., or $250,000 spent on planning a $9 million city hall that was never built, et cetera, et cetera. I think we're on similar pages, but I think when you move the conversation to staffing, all of a sudden, well, boy, we don't want to see that person lose their job. And I don't think it needs to come down to that. Walt has even said in the past, it's almost like Christmas. He said that if we tax ourselves again on non-prepared foods, or we don't, then we might not have enough money for fire and police. Then, in an NSTAR meeting, or at a council meeting when NSTAR was presenting, hey, if we repeal the non-prepared foods tax, we may be able to build this gas line. But more with Beau Burgess when we return right here on Radio Realty. That's tomorrow. It's Alaska Matters.
What's the first thing you turn to in the Homer News? Come on, you can tell me. Is it the police blotter that catches you first? Or how about that crazy cartoon? Or do you go straight for the letters to the editor to see what your wacky neighbors are up to? Well, the good news is there's no wrong answer. The Homer News can be consumed any way you like it, even online. HomerNews.com is updated daily. So this Thursday, whether you're alone or with somebody, get your copy of the Homer News and dive right in.
Talk about wow factor. Deborah Lysick at Bay Realty in Homer has a great new listing. It's an immaculate property inside and out. I mean, a spotless top to bottom reconstructed home with ocean views forever. Cozy guest cabin, a lush green lawn, major greenhouse, gardens, 2-car garage, boathouse, shed, sauna, plus what might be the world's finest fish cleaning setup. It's a 3-bedroom, 2.5-bath home on almost 5 acres on Katrina Boulevard in Iliamna Meadows subdivision. And it's just like being in your very own personal nature retreat. To get a showing of this spectacular listing, call Deborah Lysick at Bay Realty in Homer at 235-6183. That's 235-6183. Or check what Bay Realty has to offer online at bayrealtyalaska.com. Call Deborah Lysick today at 235-6183. And remember, when you need results, Bay Realty works.
Imagine you're walking on the white sand beaches of Hawaii. The sand sifting through your toes. Time stands still. The beauty surrounding you invites you to play. Alaska Aloha is that spirit of Alaska, a Hawaiian state of mind in the last frontier. Look for the Alaska Aloha booth at the Nutcracker Fair in early December. Active wear with an Alaskan flair. Alaska Aloha, the spirit of Alaska. I'm Chris Story, along with Dave Webb, engineering this broadcast, and Mr. Beau Burgess, City Councilman Beau Burgess, small businessman and great American, is on the line with me, and we're talking about everything from your tax dollars to garbage and plastic bags and everything in between. And, Beau, when we just were wrapping up there, we were talking about expenditures and the city cutting back on certain things, and I think there's a lot to like about your approach towards city government and so forth. I'd like to have you back when we could spend probably another 30 minutes or so just talking about spending money. But in the coming months ahead, is there anything in your mind that is probably chief concern that citizens should be looking out for or speaking out and attending some public meetings and getting involved in right now?
Well, I hate to ride this horse until it falls down, but definitely one of the most important things, the biggest things on the city's plate right now is a natural gas pipeline. I encourage everyone to go out and inform themselves about that process, understand what the city is and isn't doing. There are very few things we can do as a town, as a community, to lower our cost of living more than giving ourselves access to natural gas. Another big thing that from a budgetary standpoint that we need to look at, definitely how we want to utilize our port and harbor moving forward into the future for issues from fisheries to oil and gas. And also, and again, back to the same budget issue, really going through the budget with a fine-tooth comb, understanding staff health insurance, things like that, revisiting issues that are major budget line items.
There's a lot of horses out of the barn already that can never be put back in, but I would encourage you to, well, first of all, let me just make this offer that if you ever want to come here with an issue, please feel that Alaska Matters is a forum. You're welcome back at any time. And secondly, please listen to the citizens of Homer and give real thoughtful measure to individual rights over the collective rights, even when you're talking about the betterment of society as a whole. Without individual rights, there is nothing here worth protecting. That's what it's all about. And so I appreciate what you're saying today. I definitely, you and I stand on opposite sides of the plastic ban issue. I see that as a private issue that you could have, or a lot of people could have gotten together and just held a public awareness campaign and really start some grassroots efforts on that. I hate seeing garbage in my bay. I've lived here my entire life, but so definitely we're on the same page in protecting the environment. I just don't think the council has any business in that. But Beau, we're just out of time. I appreciate you very much and really look forward to having you back here on Alaska Matters and having more thoughtful discussion.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Anytime. And it's important that we do dialogue with our city council and our mayors and act local. Get vocal and act local. And you hear me often talking about Walt Reedy. Walt's a nice guy. I would go have lunch with Walt today. I don't think he'd have lunch with me, but he's a nice guy. This isn't boiling down to, is this person a nice person or not? It boils down to, does it make sense? And if it doesn't, you need to speak out and say something. And so I encourage you to do that. You're always welcome to send me an email anytime, story@xyz.net, story@xyz.net. And as I tried to allude to earlier, Radio Realty's coming up tomorrow on our sister station, that's KPEN 102 FM. Dave Webb and I will be here. Tiffany will be taking your calls. I want to thank our winners today on our Blackwater Bend Mind Bender. We did have 2 winners. Let me get their names for you. What do we got here? It looks like we've got Mary and Marguerite. Marguerite and Mary, you're both winners. You knew that glass is being crushed behind the landfill. Glass is being crushed behind the landfill. In fact, we do not take the glass anywhere, pretty much all over Alaska. Right now, though, the DOT, the federal government, the state government have come up with a way to devise a plan, actually, to use recycled glass. It's actually tumbled. Think of a rock tumbler as road bed. It comes out as a pebble, and it will be used as a road bed. So I think that's pretty cool because it stays right here in Alaska. So look for that coming to a dump near you soon. Great program. Get involved. Don't forget, you can act local and speak and get vocal. That's the only impact you've got is your freedom of speech. Use it or lose it. Again, I'm Christopher Story along with Dave Webb. We've brought you this wonderful program you can listen back to at AdventureAlaskaRadio.com. I want to thank Sarah Richardson, Tiffany, and everybody else involved. Alaska matters, and so do you.
The Peninsula's home for unforgettable favorites. Great listening, 620 AM, KGTL. Homer.